Hello, friends. Welcome to Snuggle Up. How are you all? Hope you all are good. Today, we are going to listen to the story The Necklace. This is a very pretty, interesting story. Shall we begin now? But before beginning, relax your mind, calm down yourself. Now let's begin the story. She was one of those pretty, charming young women who was born as if by an error of fate into a petty official's family. She had no dowry, no hopes, not the slightest chance of being appreciated, understood, loved, and married by a rich and distinguished man. So, she slipped into a marriage with a minor civil servant at the Ministry of Education. Unable to afford jewelry, she dressed simply. She suffered constantly, feeling that all the attributes of a gracious life, every luxury, should rightly have been hers. All these thoughts caused her pain. All these things that another woman of her class would not even have noticed tormented her and made her angry. She dreamed of thick carpeted reception rooms with oriental hangings lighted by tall bronze torches, and with huge footmen in knee breeches made drowsy by the heat from the stove, asleep in the wide armchairs. She dreamed of a luxurious life in a perfect castle. When she sat down to dinner at her round table with its 3-day-old clock and watched her husband opposite her lift the lid of the soup and exclaimed delighted, "Ah, a good homemade beef stew! There's nothing better!" She would visualize elegant dinners served on gorgeous china. She had no proper wardrobe, no jewels, nothing, and those were the only things that she loved. She felt she was made for them. She would have so loved to charm, to be envied, to be admired and sought after. She had a rich friend, a schoolmate from the convent she had attended, but she didn't like to visit her because it always made her so miserable when she got home again. She would weep for whole days at a time for sorrow, regret, despair, and distress. Then one evening her husband arrived home, looking eager and waving a large envelope. "There," he said, "there's something for you." She tore it open eagerly and took out a printed card, which said, "The Minister of Education and Madame Georges request the pleasure of the company of Mr. and Mrs. Liesel at an evening reception at the Ministry on Monday." Instead of being delighted, as her husband had hoped, she tossed the invitation on the table and muttered, annoyed, "What do you expect me to do with that?" "Why, I thought you'd be pleased, dear. You never go out, and this would be an occasion for you, a great one." "I had a lot of trouble getting it. Every one wants an invitation. They are in great demand, and there are only a few reserved for the employees. All the officials will be there." She looked at him irritated and said impatiently, "I haven't a thing to wear. How could I go?" It had never even occurred to him. He stammered, But what about the dress you wear to the theater? I think it's lovely." Too Tears escaped from the corners of her eyes and rolled slowly towards the corners of her mouth. He mumbled, "What is it? What is it?" But with great effort she had overcome her misery, and now she answered him calmly, wiping her tear-damp cheeks. "It's nothing. It's it's just that I have no evening dress, and so I can't go to the party. Give the invitation to one of your colleagues whose wife would whose, whose wife will be better dressed than I would be." He was overcome. He said, "Listen, Matilde, how much would an evening dress cost? A suitable one that you could wear again on other occasions. Something very simple." She thought for several seconds, making her calculations and at the same time estimating how much could ask for without an immediate refusal, and an exclamation of horror from this economical government clerk. At last, not too sure of herself, she said, "It's hard to say exactly, but I think I could manage with 400 francs." He went a little pale for that, because it was exactly the amount he had put aside to buy a rifle so that he could go hunting the following summer with a few friends who went shooting larks around on Sundays. However, he said, "Well, all right then, I'll give you 400 francs, but try to get something really nice." As the day of the ball drew closer, Madame Loisel seemed depressed, disturbed again, despite the fact that her dress was ready. One evening her husband said, "What's the matter? You have really been very strange the last few days." And she answered, "I hate not having a single jewel, not one stone to wear. I shall look so dull. I would almost rather not go to the party." He suggested, "Well, you can wear some fresh flowers. It's considered very appropriate at this time of the year." That didn't satisfy her at all. "No, there's nothing more humiliating than to look poverty stricken among a lot of rich women. Wait, you silly thing. Why don't you go and see Madame Forestier and ask her to lend you some jewelry? You certainly know her very well enough for that, don't you think?" She let out a joyful cry. "You're right! It never occurred to me." The next day she went to see her friend and related her tale of woe. Madame Forestier went to her mirrored wardrobe, took out a big jewel case, brought it to Madame Loisel, opened it and said, "Take your pick, my dear." Her eyes wandered from some bracelets to a pearl necklace, then to a gold Venetian cross set with stones of very fine workmanship. She tried on the jewelry before the mirror, hesitating, unable to bring herself to take them off, to give them back. And she kept asking, "Do you have anything else by chance?" "Why, yes. Here, look for yourself. I don't know which ones you'll like." She came upon a superb diamond necklace, and her heart started beating with overwhelming desire. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. She wore it around her neck and gazed at herself. Hesitantly filled with terrible doubt, she asked, "Could you lend me this one? Just this, nothing else." "Yes, of course. replied her friend. The day of the party arrived. Madame Loisel was a great success. She was the prettiest woman there, attractive, graceful, beaming, and deliriously happy. All the men looked at her, asked who she was, tried to get themselves introduced to her. She danced happily, carried away, intoxicated with pleasure, forgetting everything in this triumph of her beauty and the glory of her success. When she left the party, it was almost 4 in the morning. Her husband was sleeping since midnight in a small, deserted sitting room with 3 other gentlemen whose wives were having a wonderful time. Finally, they left the party and they went sadly to their apartment, for it was all over for her. She took off her wraps before the mirror so that she could see herself in all her glory once more. Then she cried out. The necklace was gone. There was nothing around her neck. Her husband, already half undressed, asked, "What's the matter?" She turned towards him in a frenzy. The, the, the necklace, it's gone. He got up thunderstruck. What did you say? What? Impossible! And they searched the folds of her dress, the folds of her wrap, the pockets, everywhere. They didn't find it. He asked, "Are you sure you still had it when we left the ball?" "Yes, I remember touching it in the hallway of the ministry. But if you had lost it in the street, we would have heard it fall. It must be in the cab." "Yes, most likely. Do you remember the number?" "No." "What about you? Did you notice it?" "No." They looked at each other in a confused manner. Finally, Loisel got dressed again. "I'm going to retrace the whole distance we covered on foot," he said, "and see if I can't find it." And he left the house. She remained in her evening dress, too weak to go to bed, sitting crushed on a chair, lifeless and blank. Her husband returned about 7 o'clock in the morning. He had found nothing. He went to the police station, to the newspapers to offer a reward, to the officers of the cab companies, in a word, wherever there seemed to be the slightest hope of tracing. She spent the whole day waiting in a state of utter hopelessness. Loisel returned in the evening, his face lined and pale. He had learned nothing. "You must write to your friend," he said, "and tell her that you have broken the clasp of the necklace and that you are getting it mended. That'll give us some time to decide what to do." She wrote the letter at his dictation. By the end of the week, they had lost all hope. The couple decided to buy a new necklace. Then they went from one jewelry shop to the next, trying to find a necklace similar to the one which they had borrowed. In a fashionable shop nearby, they found a diamond necklace which was exactly like the one which they had borrowed. It was worth 40,000 francs. They had only 18,000 francs as savings. They borrowed the rest of the money from many people and finally managed to get the new necklace. While returning the necklace, Madame Forestier said in a faintly tone, "You could have brought it back a little sooner." I might have needed it. She didn't open the box. She just kept it as it is. Then came the actual problem. Madame Loisel came to know the awful life of the poverty-stricken. The crushing debt had to be paid. They dismissed the maid. They moved into an attic under the roof. She did all the heavy household chores, the loathsome work of the kitchen. Her husband worked in the evenings and mostly at night also to repay the debt. And it went on like that for 10 years. After 10 years, they had settled all their debt. Madame Loisel looked old now, but sometimes, when her husband was at the office, she would sit down by the window and muse over that party long ago when she had been so beautiful. How would things have turned out if she hadn't lost that necklace? Who could tell? How strange and fickle life is. How little it takes to make or break you. Then, one Sunday, when she was strolling along the road to forget the week's chores for a while, she suddenly caught sight of a woman taking a child for a walk. It was Madame Forestier, still young, still beautiful, still charming. Madame Loisel started to tremble. Should she speak to her? Yes, certainly she should. And now that she had paid everything back, why shouldn't she tell her the whole story? She went up to her. Hello! But Madame Forestier didn't recognize her, and was surprised that this plainly dressed woman should speak to her so familiarly. She murmured, Madam, I'm sure you must be mistaken. No, I'm not. I'm Mathilde Lyson. Her friend gave a little cry. Oh, my poor Mathilde! What happened to you? You have changed a lot. Yes, I've been through some pretty hard times since I last saw you, and I've had plenty of trouble, and all because of you. Because of me? What do you mean? You remember the diamond necklace you lent me to wear to the party of the ministry? Yes. What about it? Well, I lost it. What are you talking about? You returned it to me. What I gave you was another one just like it, and it took us 10 years to pay for it. You can imagine it wasn't easy for us, since we were quite poor. Anyway, I'm done. It's over. I'm glad also. Madame Forestier stopped short. You say you bought a diamond necklace to replace that other one? Yes, you didn't even notice then? They really were exactly alike. And Madame Forestier smiled full of proud, simple joy. She profoundly moved, took Mathilde's hands in her own. Oh, my poor Mathilde, mine was false. It was not a real diamond necklace. It was worth 500 francs at the most. See, friends, greed, deceptive appearances, beauty and vanity, everything can change in a snapshot. Please find comfort with what you possess, or else ultimately you might also be leading to lose what wealth and status you initially had. Good night, sweet dreams.